this guy that I'm seeing, he said that he's having these money issues right now, and he's kind of pulling away, and he's like refocusing his life over here on career and business. And so he's not hanging out with me as much. He's not talking to me as much. Like, what should I be doing in this situation in order to kind of make him feel better and make him feel like it's okay that he has money issues, and we don't have to break up because of the fact that he has these money issues. And what do you think you would say to something like that?
Oh my gosh, I hear that all the time. And I mean, we do all sorts of women's events, and Jeff and I do marriage conferences and relationship conferences. And that is such a common thing. I've had so many, and it's especially women who will say, he just he doesn't care about me because he's working all this time and he's spending so many hours at the office. And really like focusing on money. And when I go and try to diagnose this, I'm like, he's trying to get to a point where he feels like he's stable enough to ask you to marry him is what's happening. I mean, that is not always the case, but the vast majority of the time, as long as there's not something wrong in the relationship, that's what's going on. And one of the things that I also just want to tell anyone who's listening to this, man or woman, is that especially when there's any time of economic uncertainty, when there's periods where people are a little bit more worried about money, this is an area that is huge in the back of the mind statistically for everybody, but especially for men. And this is a moment where it makes so much difference if especially a woman. Now, statistically, these numbers tend to be about 80 to 85%. It's not 100. But in general, this is one of the few things we've seen that does have statistical differences between men and women, where it makes all the difference. If you can help remove some of that worry from his mind, and for him to actually hear you say and believe, honey, listen, I really appreciate all the efforts that you're putting in and the fact that you're killing yourself to try to do overtime or whatever that is. I so appreciate that. But listen, I would live with you in a little tiny hut on a dirt farm somewhere. I just care about us. And I don't need that big thing that you're trying to save up for. I'd rather be together, and I'd rather start our life together now. And that removes so much pressure from the brains of the average man that is really thinking that what she most wants is what he's providing, when for us as women, what we most want in most cases is him.
Man, that is beautiful that you just said that, and the way that you said that was just absolutely fantastic. I loved it, and it's so cool to hear stuff like that, and to hear you say something like that. And from a guy's perspective, it's like, yeah, I mean, really, like, and like, even just in the world, right? It's like, okay, I hear that from you, and it's almost like I feel a weight kind of coming off of my shoulders. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I can just relax here into this, and just be here with this kind of situation without worrying about money and all those kinds of things. Right. And yeah, absolutely. That was beautiful advice for sure.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I mean, we've been doing this research for so many years. I mean, what I'm talking about there is some research we did on men and women years ago for our books for women only and for men only. And it was one of those things that even having done the research on how men think and what percentage of men have this kind of hovering black cloud, like in the back of their brain, that's asking, how am I going to be able to provide? Even having heard that and seen that on the survey, and we do all these massive nationally representative surveys that cost $1 bazillion to get really great data. So I knew the data was good. I'd heard this personally from thousands of men. And yet, after seeing how the books were received, and after seeing what happened in the hearts of the men, especially once they either read that or heard a girlfriend or a wife say that, that, look, I know you're working so hard to provide, and that's awesome, but what I most want is you, right? Um, and seeing the weight that just seems to lift from the shoulders, it never really goes away statistically for most men, but you can do so much to give them the recognition as a man that you appreciate what they're already doing. Because if they don't hear that, then that shuts them down as well. But that you appreciate what they're doing and their heart behind it. But listen, you need to take the pressure off, because I would live with you anywhere. I don't need the big house. I actually, if you don't mind, I actually have a personal example I'd love to share.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where my husband and I actually, when Jeff and I started off our marriage, we were living in Manhattan, living in New York City, and he is an attorney and I was an analyst on Wall Street, and we were both working tons of hours, right? But his hours were even worse than mine. And he literally was working billable hours, like 100 hours a week, like something you don't think is physically possible, but he was. And I never saw him. And we were newlyweds. And we were living in a doorman building in sort of a general area of Manhattan. And I was constantly, in the rare times that I saw him, constantly saying, honey, can't you just tell your boss no? Like, can't you just say, no, I'm not coming into the office on Saturday? Or can't you, can we get away for a weekend? Can't you just tell him no? And at some point he would get shut down and withdrawn and angry, and his personality was changing. And it wasn't until he was finally able to articulate these words. And he said, do you think I want to be working this much? Do you think I want to be away from you? And he finally was able to articulate, I'm working this much because I was saying, don't you care about me? Don't you love me? And he said, do you think I want to be working this much? I'm doing it because I care about you. We have $100,000 in student loan debt from Harvard that we have to pay off. We're living in a doorman building in New York City because you wanted a doorman building because it made you feel more secure. But yeah, it's a little more expensive. And I'm busting my tail because I love you. And it was this huge moment where I realized, without intending to, I had been putting this pressure on him that I didn't even realize he was feeling, candidly. And I was able to say, honey, I will live anywhere. I will live in a little like hut in Brooklyn, like, and have to commute an hour a day if that is what it takes, where it takes some of the pressure off of you. We can go quit our jobs right now. You will find another job. We can move to another city, do whatever we need to do so that you can have the kind of life that you want to have as well. And hearing those words, which I kind of assumed he knew, but hearing me actually say that, he said it totally changed everything. And probably within 6 months, we had left Manhattan and we had moved to where we live now in Atlanta, because he recognized I really meant it. I really did care more for him than for what he was providing. So for any woman listening to this who's sort of wondering, I wonder if that's what's going on, statistically, probably is.